It was another quiet night aboard the space station. The fluorescent lights above flickered softly, casting long shadows across the walls of the small chamber. The human, a young man named Jack, sat by his desk, surrounded by paperwork and empty coffee cups. He had just finished his shift and was preparing to rest, the soft hum of the station's engines the only sound keeping him company. It had been an uneventful day, just another boring routine in the endless void of space. But tonight, things would be different. A sudden knock echoed through the door, sharp and insistent. Jack's eyes snapped to the door, confusion flashing in his mind. Who could it be at this hour? He wasn't expecting anyone, and the station's crew usually respected each other's privacy, especially late at night. Hesitant, Jack stood up and walked slowly towards the door. His heart began to race, an odd feeling creeping over him. Maybe it was a mistake or a late-night delivery, but the knock felt strange, urgent, almost. He placed his hand on the door control and hesitated for a moment. The soft hum of the station filled the silence. With a quick press, the door slid open. Standing in the doorway was someone, or rather, something Jack never expected to see. A tall figure stood before him, illuminated by the soft glow of the corridor lights. She was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. A regal presence, dressed in a shimmering gown that seemed to shimmer with colors he couldn't quite describe. Her skin was smooth and glowing, a deep violet hue, almost as if she were made of stardust. Her eyes, glowing with a bright, otherworldly light, stared into his, unblinking. The figure in front of him was not human. Jack's mouth went dry as he struggled to process the sight before him. She was beautiful, no, more than beautiful. She was mesmerizing, like something from the ancient myths, a strange, foreign beauty that made his breath catch in his throat. The alien stepped forward with grace, her presence commanding the very air around her. She looked at Jack, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and purpose. Then, in a voice that was both smooth and commanding, she spoke. "Can you please clean me, human?" she asked, her tone gentle but firm. Jack's mind raced. What was going on? His eyes widened in confusion as he tried to find his voice. What? He stammered. He blinked, sure that he must have misunderstood. Was this some kind of joke? A prank from the crew? But no, the look in her eyes told him it was not a joke. She was serious, and she wasn't going anywhere. "I am the princess of the Ithar," she continued, her voice carrying a regal authority. "I have come to you for this task. It is a tradition of my people, and I require your help." Jack stood frozen in disbelief, unable to speak. The princess? Tradition? His brain couldn't keep up with what was happening. She was an alien, and she was asking him to clean her. Why? Was it some form of alien custom? He had never heard of anything like this. The alien princess stepped into the room, moving past Jack with an elegance that seemed almost unnatural. Her presence filled the room, and for a moment, Jack felt a strange sensation, a mix of awe and unease, as though this was the start of something that would change everything. "Do not be afraid," she said softly, her voice somehow reassuring yet unsettling. "This is something all humans can do for my kind. It is part of our tradition, and I must have it done now." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. This was real. She wasn't just some dream or hallucination. This alien princess was standing in his room, asking him no, demanding him to help her with something he couldn't even begin to understand. Still unable to find words, Jack took a step back, allowing her to enter fully. He closed the door behind him, the silence now deafening. What was happening? Was this some kind of test? Was it safe? The princess turned to face him, her eyes glowing brighter as she took in the details of the room, as if making sure everything was perfect for whatever was to come next. Jack could feel the weight of the moment. His entire body seemed to freeze. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew one thing for sure: his life was about to change forever. And so, he stood there, in the presence of the alien princess, unsure of what this strange request meant, but certain that whatever came next would leave him shaken to his core. The princess stood still, her gaze never leaving Jack's, as if studying every movement he made. There was a strange energy in the air, one that made him feel both mesmerized and trapped in her presence. The dim light from the station's corridor seemed to reflect off her skin, making her glow softly. almost like a living star. Jack couldn't look away, despite the confusion and disbelief swirling in his mind. Every instinct told him to ask questions, to demand answers, but all he could do was stand there, unable to tear his eyes away from her. "You are confused," she spoke again, her voice gentle but with a definite command that made him feel small. "Do not worry. It is a simple request, simple." Jack didn't know how anything about this could be considered simple. Her words barely made sense in his mind. An alien princess, asking him to clean her? He had heard of strange customs from other cultures, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. I don't understand," Jack finally managed to say, his voice shaky. "Why me? Why this?" The princess' eyes softened, but her expression remained calm and serious. "Where I come from, we have customs to connect with humans. Your race, your presence, it brings balance. I need this, human, and you must help me." Her words had a weight to them, a deep meaning he couldn't fully grasp. It was as if she were asking something far beyond a mere task, something that held importance for her entire race. Jack's mind raced. Was this a cultural ritual? Some kind of test? He couldn't fathom why an alien princess would choose him, someone so ordinary, to fulfill such a personal request. And yet, there she was, waiting for him to act, without another word. She moved past him and toward the center of the room. She looked around briefly, as though assessing the space, then turned to face him once more. "This is how it is done," she said, her voice barely above a whisper now. Jack stood frozen. There was an undeniable pull in her presence, something he couldn't explain. His thoughts scrambled, trying to understand what was happening. She wasn't human. Her mannerisms, the way she carried herself, the way her words lingered in the air, everything about her screamed that she was something far beyond his comprehension. And yet, her request was so simple, a simple task that somehow felt momentous. "I don't know how to do this," Jack muttered, his eyes downcast. His hands were sweaty, and his mind was racing, torn between his growing curiosity and the nagging feeling that he shouldn't be involved in something so strange, so intimate. The princess seemed to sense his hesitation. She took a slow, deliberate step closer, her voice now calm, almost soothing. "It is natural, human. You have nothing to fear. I trust you." There was something in her tone that made Jack feel as though he had no choice but to go along with it. The words weren't commanding, yet they carried an unspoken power. He felt as though she was both a queen and a stranger, someone he should fear and revere at the same time. Jack couldn't tear his eyes from her, and with a deep, uncertain breath, he walked toward her, unsure of what to do next. The princess stood perfectly still, her regal form bathed in the soft light of the room, waiting. The weight of her gaze pressed on him as he took another step forward. Something about this was wrong, but at the same time, something about it felt inevitable. As Jack stood before her, he could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, and the princess, with her calm and distant air, seemed unaffected. But Jack knew deep down that whatever this was, it was more than just a strange request. It was the beginning of something far bigger, and he had no idea what the consequences would be. But he also knew one thing was certain: he couldn't turn back now. The room grew heavier as Jack stood before the princess, a strange mixture of curiosity, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite place churning within him. The air seemed charged with energy, making every breath feel more intense, more deliberate. He glanced at her, the alien princess, who stood motionless, as if awaiting him to make the next move. Her eyes, glowing with an almost hypnotic brilliance, never left his face, and for a moment, Jack wondered if he was being drawn into something beyond his control. The princess finally spoke, her voice low and steady, yet somehow comforting. "There is no need to fear. It is only a ritual, a way for us to connect." Jack's mind raced. Connect? He couldn't wrap his head around what she meant. She was an alien, and yet she seemed so human in some ways, especially in the way she spoke. There was a vulnerability in her words, an admission of something deeper. She wasn't just an untouchable royal. She was a being with needs, desires, and rituals just like any other. "Do you know what this means? Human?" she asked, her voice still calm, but there was an underlying tension in her words now. "This is not just an act of service. It is a sacred tradition of my people. It symbolizes purity, trust, and balance. Your touch, it will cleanse me in ways you cannot understand." Jack's heart pounded louder in his chest as the realization hit him. This wasn't just some random, bizarre request. It had meaning, significance to her. And yet, his mind could barely grasp it. A ritual of purification? Was he supposed to just accept this? Was it really that simple? As his mind swirled with questions, the princess took another step forward. She moved with a fluidity that seemed almost unnatural, her movements graceful yet assertive, like she was in full control of everything around her. Her presence seemed to command the room. Yet there was something in her gaze, a slight vulnerability that kept Jack rooted to the spot. "Do not hesitate," she said, sensing his inner turmoil. "You are the chosen one, human, the one who will help me in this moment. This is my request, and I trust you." Jack couldn't stop himself from looking away. He wasn't sure if it was the weight of her gaze or the strange, electric atmosphere between them. But something inside him urged him to retreat. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped closer, his hands trembling ever so slightly as he reached out toward her. The closer he got, the more he could feel the pulsating energy filling the room, a hum that seemed to resonate with something deep inside of him. He touched her arm, and the moment his skin made contact with hers, he felt it. A sharp jolt of electricity shot up his arm, an almost painful sensation that took him by surprise. But it wasn't a bad pain. It was intense, powerful, like an awakening. His mind flooded with images, vivid, strange, and alien, yet somehow familiar. They flashed before his eyes like glimpses of another world, a world that he could barely understand, but one that now seemed so close, so real. The princess's eyes closed for a moment, her face serene as she took in a long breath. Jack watched her, unsure of what was happening, yet drawn to her with an almost magnetic pull. There was something ancient, something primal in this ritual. It felt like he was standing at the edge of something vast, something infinite, and he had no idea where it would lead. "You feel it, don't you?" she whispered, her voice softer now, as if sharing a secret. "The connection, the bond." Jack didn't know how to answer. He didn't understand what was happening, but deep down, he knew that he was part of something monumental, something that went beyond him, beyond space, beyond his reality. It was as if, for that moment, everything else faded away: the station, the stars, the distance from Earth, and all that remained was the electric pull between them, binding them together in an unspoken understanding. And yet, there was still so much Jack didn't know. What was this ritual really for? What did it mean for him? And what would happen once it was over? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but there was no turning back now. Whatever was unfolding between them was only just beginning. As Jack's hand remained in contact with the princess's arm, the strange, tingling sensation intensified. It was no longer just a simple touch. It was as though every fiber of his being was waking up, alive with the raw energy flowing between them. His senses became heightened, as if he could feel the very heartbeat of the space station itself, pulsing in rhythm with the princess's presence. She seemed to notice the change in him. Her eyes, glowing with a soft light, flickered for a moment, and a faint smile curled at the corner of her lips. "You feel it, don't you?" Her voice was almost a whisper, carrying a depth of knowing that sent shivers down Jack's spine. Jack nodded, unable to form words. His mind was overwhelmed with an unfamiliar mix of awe and unease. The moment felt timeless, like they were suspended in the very air of the station. And yet, despite the surreal nature of the encounter, there was something deeply personal about it. The energy between them felt like an ancient force, one that had existed far before either of them. It was both unsettling and intoxicating, pulling him deeper into the unknown. The princess slowly removed her gaze from him, her focus turning inward as if she was in some kind of trance. Her hands fluttered near her waist, and for a brief second, Jack saw something that made his heart skip a beat: glowing symbols etched into her skin, delicate yet unmistakable, pulsing with an eerie glow. They were ancient symbols, unlike anything he'd ever seen, and the longer he stared, the more they seemed to draw him in, as if calling him to uncover their meaning. His throat tightened. What are those?" he managed to ask, his voice hoarse. The princess's lips parted slightly. But she didn't speak right away. Instead, her eyes drifted back to him, and for a moment, Jack saw something flicker in them, a flicker of vulnerability that he hadn't expected. It was almost as if she were laying herself bare before him, sharing a part of herself that she had never shown anyone else. "They are the marks of my people," she said, her voice steady but laden with emotion. "A mark of purity, a mark of trust. I am bound by them. And tonight, I offer you this trust, human." Jack's pulse raced as he processed her words. The significance of this moment was becoming clearer, but he still couldn't fully grasp its meaning. There was a connection forming between them, an undeniable bond. But why him? What had made her choose him? He was just a simple human, a small speck in the vastness of space. "Why me?" he asked before he could stop himself. "Why did you come to me? There must be someone else, someone more." "No," she interrupted gently, her eyes locking onto his. "I chose you. You are the one, the human who has the potential to understand, to carry this ritual with me. It is not about being more. It is about something deeper than that. Something ancient." Jack's mind spun as her words sunk in. She didn't answer his question directly, but somehow that made it all the more real. There was no turning back now. The ritual, the energy, the bond between them, it was all unfolding in ways Jack couldn't have imagined. Every moment, every touch, every glance was more intense than the last. The boundaries between them were blurring, and Jack found himself wondering if the connection they shared could transcend anything he had ever known. The room seemed to shrink, the space around them charged with an invisible force, and Jack could feel it pulling them closer to something unknown, something far beyond the confines of this space station. But despite the mystery, despite the uncertainty, Jack couldn't deny that he was now a part of something extraordinary. The princess's trust, the ritual, everything. It was no longer just about him. It was about them. And Jack had no idea where this would lead. But deep inside, he knew this was just the beginning. The princess stepped back slightly, her presence still dominating the room. Yet there was a softness to her now, something Jack hadn't noticed before. She appeared less like an untouchable royal and more like a person, a being with emotions, vulnerabilities. It was a shift that Jack couldn't quite explain, but it made everything feel more real, more personal. As she slowly turned away from him, her movements were deliberate, graceful, but there was a hint of hesitation in her steps. For the first time, Jack saw a flicker of uncertainty cross her face. It wasn't just the mysterious alien princess before him anymore. It was someone who was wrestling with her own thoughts, her own struggles. She glanced back at him, her glowing eyes no longer distant but searching, almost pleading. "Do you understand now, human?" she asked quietly, her voice soft but still holding that underlying command. "What this ritual means?" Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. He nodded slowly, though he wasn't sure if he fully understood. There was something deeper here, something far beyond what he had initially thought. It wasn't just about a strange, alien ritual. It was about a connection, something profound that neither of them could control. "I'm trying to," he finally managed, his voice trembling slightly. His hands were still warm from the energy they had shared, but now there was a coldness creeping in, as if the intensity of the moment was too much for him to process. "But why me? Why did you come to me?" She turned fully to face him now, her expression unreadable for a moment. The silence in the room was thick, as if the answer hung between them, waiting to be spoken. "You are not the first human I have met," she said slowly, her gaze falling to the floor for a brief second before lifting again to meet his eyes. "But you are the one I chose, not because you are special, not because you are different, but because there is something in you, something pure that I need. Your touch, your presence, it resonates with mine in a way I cannot explain." Jack felt his pulse quicken. The princess was speaking in riddles, but there was sincerity in her voice, something raw that cut through the confusion clouding his mind. She wasn't just asking for a simple favor. This was about something far more intricate, something that tied them together in ways he couldn't understand, yet couldn't deny. "Something pure," Jack repeated under his breath, unsure of what she meant. Was she referring to some kind of cosmic connection between their species, or was it something more personal? It didn't matter. He was standing here, with the princess of an alien world, in the middle of an impossible situation. He could either walk away or embrace the unknown that was unfolding before him. The princess stepped closer again, her gaze now tender, almost vulnerable. "I have spent so much time alone, Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "In my position, I have never known what it means to truly connect with another, to be seen for who I am, not just as a ruler. This ritual, it is my way of bridging that gap, of offering myself in a way I never have before." Jack's heart swelled with an emotion he hadn't anticipated. There was a depth to her words, a longing that was so different from the intimidating figure he had first seen. She wasn't just a princess. She was a being, a creature who had lived her life burdened by her responsibilities, isolated in a way Jack couldn't truly comprehend. He took a step forward, his hands slightly shaking, but his heart steady. "I don't know if I can truly understand what you've been through," he said quietly, "but I can try. I can be here for you, for whatever comes next." A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Her eyes glistened with something more than just light. They were filled with gratitude. She stepped even closer, her form radiating warmth. And for the first time, Jack felt the full weight of her presence, not as a princess, but as someone seeking connection. Just like him. And in that moment, something shifted between them. It wasn't just a ritual anymore. It was an unspoken promise, a bond forming in the silence. Jack didn't know where this would lead, but for the first time since she had entered his room, he felt as though he was part of something greater, something he couldn't explain, but something that was undeniable. The room felt warmer now, the air charged with a palpable intensity. Jack could sense it, the quiet hum of energy that filled the space between them. It was as though the walls themselves were closing in, but not in a suffocating way, in a way that made everything feel more intimate, more real. The princess, no longer standing aloof and distant, had become a presence that Jack couldn't ignore. She was no longer just a regal alien in front of him. She had become something much more, a person, fragile and strong all at once. Her eyes never left his, and in them, Jack saw something he hadn't noticed before, a depth, an uncertainty. The confidence she had exuded earlier was still there, but it was tempered now with something raw, something human. She wasn't just an alien princess. She was someone who had carried the weight of her crown for too long, someone who had been alone in her grandeur. "You don't understand what it means to be isolated," she said softly, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "To always be seen as a symbol, but never as someone real, not someone who needs the touch of another." Jack's breath hitched as he processed her words. She was admitting something vulnerable, almost fragile, in the way she spoke. It wasn't the voice of royalty that commanded an empire. It was the voice of someone who had been stripped of that facade, searching for something deeper, something real. "I don't know what it's like to carry the weight of a throne," Jack said quietly, his voice steady but filled with empathy. "But I do know what it's like to be lost, to not know where you belong." Her gaze softened, and she stepped closer, closing the gap between them. "That is why I chose you," she whispered. "You are not like the others. You see me not as a ruler, not as a being of power, but as something more." Jack felt his pulse quicken. Was this the connection she had been talking about? Was it truly as simple as her seeing him, and him seeing her, for what they truly were? The weight of her words sank deep within him, leaving an unspoken understanding between them. For the first time, the princess seemed to let go of her royal demeanor. Her shoulders relaxed, and her usual air of command faded, replaced by something quieter, something more intimate. Jack could see the complexity of her emotions playing out in the subtle shifts of her expression. The way she stood before him, vulnerable but strong, she raised her hand slowly, her fingers brushing against his cheek in a delicate, almost hesitant touch. The sensation sent a wave of warmth through Jack's body, a contrast to the cool, sterile environment of the space station. For a moment, everything else seemed to fade away, the hum of the station, the distant stars outside the windows, until there was only the two of them, standing together in this small, confined space. "You understand," she said, her voice barely audible. "You know what it means to be seen." Jack nodded slowly, the realization settling in his chest. There was a depth to their connection, a bond forged through something much deeper than the ritual itself. It wasn't just the energy between them, or the strange request she had made. It was the understanding they shared, the shared feeling of loneliness, of wanting to be seen for who they truly were, not just for what others expected them to be. The princess took another step closer, her face now inches from his. Her breath was soft against his skin, and Jack could feel the electricity in the air intense, undeniable. The moment between them seemed to stretch out, the silence speaking volumes more than words could. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice a fragile plea. Just for a moment longer, and for the first time, Jack realized that this strange, alien princess wasn't asking for his help because of her royal duty. She wasn't seeking a ritual for power or purification. She was seeking something far more human: connection. And in that moment, Jack knew that he was part of something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. Something that went beyond species, beyond boundaries. A bond that could never be broken. And so, without a word, he stayed. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a shared space, filled with something deeper than words could express, something unspoken but understood. Jack stood there, his breath steady, but his heart pounding in his chest. The princess's presence was overwhelming, but in a way, it felt grounding, as if everything in the universe had momentarily aligned for this strange, impossible connection. She stepped back slightly, breaking the quiet tension just enough to look at him more fully. Her eyes were still glowing faintly, but there was no longer that distant, royal coldness. Instead, there was something warm in them, something that made Jack feel as if she was seeing him for the first time, not just as a human, but as someone who had become a part of her world in a way he could never have imagined. "I did not expect this," she whispered, her voice carrying a note of surprise, mixed with something else, something softer. "I thought I was only here to complete the ritual, but it has become something more, something I never thought possible." Jack felt a wave of uncertainty crash over him. He had never thought he would be standing here, in this moment, with an alien princess, caught up in something he couldn't even begin to explain. It wasn't just about her. It was about him, too, the way she had seen through him, the way they had connected in a way no one had ever done before. "I don't know what's happening," Jack admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels like something has changed between us." The princess nodded, her eyes filled with a depth that made Jack's heart ache. "It has," she said simply. "It's the beginning of something new. Not just for you, not just for me, but for both of us." She moved closer once again, her steps deliberate but slow, as if savoring the moment. Jack's mind was still reeling from everything that had happened, but in her presence, it felt like the chaos of the universe had quieted, leaving only the two of them standing in this small room, in the quiet expanse of space. "I never thought I would find this," she continued, her voice soft but intense. "A connection like this. I have spent so much time alone, ruling, living in a world that sees me only as a symbol. But you've seen me for who I truly am, and that is something I never thought I'd experience." Jack's breath caught in his throat. The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and true. She wasn't just talking about the ritual anymore. She was talking about them, about the bond that had formed between them, something that went beyond the physical touch or the strange request she had made. "Maybe we were meant to meet," Jack said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He wasn't sure if he believed in fate, but in that moment, with the princess standing before him, looking at him with such intensity, he couldn't help but think that something larger than chance had brought them together. For a moment, there was nothing but the soft, rhythmic hum of the station, the two of them caught in a shared understanding. They were not the same, alien and human, but in that moment, their differences seemed insignificant, swallowed up by something far more powerful: connection. It was a force that neither of them had expected, but now it was undeniable. They had bridged the gap between worlds, between species, and what was left was a bond that neither time nor space could sever. The princess stepped even closer, her breath mingling with his, and in that fleeting moment, Jack realized that this encounter, this strange ritual, this unspoken bond was just the beginning. Whatever came next, they would face it together, no longer as a human and an alien princess, but as two beings who had found something rare, something worth holding on to. And as the princess's hand reached out to gently touch his face, Jack knew with absolute certainty that his life would never be the same again.